Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. One of the ideas that always gets thrown around is what criteria does Gaijin have when they add stuff to the game? And whenever you can think of a piece of criteria or a definition or a thought that they may use, there's always kind of a contradictory vehicle which is in the game for it. So, they only add standard vehicles that were produced and used by the armed forces. Well, you have a bunch of prototypes in the game, don't you? So, obviously that's not true. Oh, well, maybe it's vehicles that were built and tested, and that's about it. Well, there's quite a lot of vehicles that were built, yes, but also at the same time weren't tested properly. So stuff like the Flapjack, for example, and also many other vehicles didn't go through full testing. All right, well, maybe it's the fact that it's just built itself. Oh, well, we have a bunch of ships in the game that weren't fully built, and also we have some ground vehicles, and even we have some air vehicles, like the F-16AJ, for example, and also stuff like the R2Y2s that were recently removed, that also were never built, just either imagined or thought about in general. So wherever you line up on the kind of line of what is the criteria of what Gaijin is going to add, you're always going to come a cropper, because there's always an example of something that doesn't fit that mold. There are many exceptions to the rules, and that's because there aren't any rules, and that's why there's no publicly stated rules, because Gaijin learned a long time ago that it's a bad idea to actually put these things in stone. One of the things that Gaijin used to do back in the day is they used to make a bunch of posts, especially when, we're talking like a decade ago, by the way. So like they used to do some posts about, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing in the future. This is kind of the proposed additions. Like they made these huge posts from aviation about proposed vehicles that they wanted to add to the game. There was some crazy stuff in there. There was the ME-262HG series. There was some of the larger scale bombers, and there was many different vehicles. Maybe what we'll do is we'll take a trip down memory lane one day and kind of have a look at them. But then they also said that one of the criteria of adding vehicles is they had a cutoff date. So anything after that date was not going to be added into the game. And also there was going to be no air-to-air missiles. There was going to be no supersonic vehicles, because it just wouldn't work in the game. And then what happened? Well, they updated the game engine, because Gaijin runs their own game engine, and they were able to update it to a point where they could add these parts in. And now we have literally modern vehicles in the game, and a lot of them. So the fact is, the plans changed. And that is why Gaijin have stopped talking about why they make specific decisions and why they add vehicles and why they don't add others. Usually they give you a boilerplate answer, such as we think it would be fun or we think it fits in the tech tree well. And the reason for this is because the real reason behind adding these types of things is pretty simple. Do they think it will improve the game, and do they think people will enjoy it? And sometimes, when it comes down to it, when you're making large decisions, or when you're making, game-changing decisions, or when you're making, like, business decisions, sometimes the criteria of making the decision is one of the most kind of basic things possible. Will people enjoy this? And that's why whenever I see kind of arguments or discussions about what will Gaijin add, will they add this, will they add that, for me, the thing that always sticks in my head is, will it improve the game? Will it either improve it in terms of stability? And what I mean by that is, like, will it mean that people will stay around for longer? Or will it improve it in the fun factor, in the kind of bringing people back in or getting more people involved? For example, the Flapjack, right? The Flapjack event is going on right now, the XF5U, or as people know it, the Pancake, even though the Pancake is the prototype to this one, the Y173. But the Flapjack is a vehicle that was built. It never flew. It did some taxi testing, and they realized it was incredibly unstable, and then they abandoned the project because it came around at a time where the jet age turned up, and it just made more sense to push more resources into theirs. So maybe in some universe, the Flapjack exists, and it flies, and, you get a bunch of test data on it, and it feels really good. But the problem is, in this one, that isn't the case. So this is a vehicle that doesn't have any real data around it in terms of how it should actually act. Instead, what we're going off of is, well, models, basically simulations working out how it should fly and what it should be like. The vehicle didn't even have any guns. The weight itself is always going to be all over the place because you can only add what you find data on. So you have a vehicle there which doesn't really fit in a lot of these standard criteria that people actually bring up with in terms of what should be added to the game. But at the end of the day, does that matter to Gaijin? No. What matters is people are interested in the vehicle and people want to see the vehicle. But the issue with this, and this has always been the problem, because I actually agree, right? I actually agree with the idea that they should focus on stuff that they think people will enjoy and also bring balance to the game. Because so far, after many years in War Thunder, I think they've done a pretty good job with both. There's a lot of people who've stuck around for a long time. There's been a good kind of cyclical, set of updates to everything, and it seems like people are generally satisfied with stuff. Usually the gripes that people have is either the research, which is completely understandable and I agree with, or the maps. The vehicles themselves are never really something that I hear a lot of people kind of grumble about. Surprisingly, what people usually talk about when it comes to the vehicles is what's going to come next and what they want to see. And for me, when it comes down to it, I think they've been doing a pretty good job with it. The problem I have is when they go against certain ideas and then you have massive contradictions. So, for example, the fake German vehicles, okay? So you have the Tiger II 105, you have the Panther II, and then you also have the Coelian. These three vehicles were removed from the game. The reason is because they never existed in the form that they are represented into the game. And they were added in because Gaijin didn't think that they were, or at least at the time, they were planning for World War II stuff, and then they would go post from that. And these were three vehicles that were technically World War II that would serve as the top BRs of the German tech tree. But then they added in a bunch of other vehicles, and now those vehicles could be removed. But when they removed them, they added in quote-unquote parity vehicles that did not match up with the vehicles themselves. So you still actually have that gap in the German tech tree. At 7.0, where the Panther II and the Tiger II 105 are, you still don't have any vehicles apart from those and the Coelian. And in what happened in the last update is with the Flak Panzer 341, which is the Coelian, they buffed it aggressively, giving it a new round. And this means that it is not available for people to get, and only veteran players have access to it. So basically, you can get beaten up by a vehicle that you can never see in terms of being able to research in the game. Now, for me, that doesn't sound very balanced. That actually sounds horrific. It sounds like the opposite of what you would want, where you have a specific percentage of people who are going to ruin the games for other people because they have access to something that other people don't. That's going to add aggression, and that's going to add other stuff. But in my opinion, when I look at these vehicles, what I see are vehicles that would easily just slide back into the tech tree. There's nothing else of their BR in the tech tree. The vehicles themselves, it's not as if they're like banned from the game because, I have them and many other people have them. You can play them as much as you want. And the fact is they don't have a standard tech tree equivalent at the BR that they exist. So I don't get why a vehicle like the Flapjack is allowed to exist in the game. Because it's fun, because it's interesting, and all of that, that's fine. But for some reason, other vehicles are not, even though they fit into that same model. And it's just confusing to me. And I've never really understood it. And it's one of the problems with having such an open idea, when you have certain people who just either say yes or no, and that's it. And I get why people get frustrated with these things, because I personally at the same time get frustrated too, because I just don't understand where they get the ideas from in terms of the contradictions. But at the end of the day, if you just see it as, well, they make decisions based off what they think will work the best and gut feeling, that starts to make more sense in my head. Whether that's correct or not, who knows? But so far, it seems to work pretty well. The issue with stuff like that is when the decision makers change, and hopefully when it comes to War Thunder that won't happen anytime soon. But we're seeing more pressure from communities, we're seeing more aggression, to be honest, and who knows when people will pop. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.